another example of how this is getting in with the gender ideology. In June, my teacher friend went to a 3-day training for the Utah Association for Gifted Children, because she teaches gifted students, which gifted students and English second language learners and special needs students are all included in the regular classroom now. So any strategies used for those groups are going to be used for all students. Okay, so she went to this 3-day training thinking she was going to learn how to better to teach gifted children, and she said the entire 3 days was teaching us on strategies of inclusion, which is their red flag term for LGBT inclusion in the classroom, to normalize it, to make those kids feel safe and welcome and included, right? So paying special attention to these students. Is inclusion important? Is teaching inclusion important for every student? Yes. Yes. Am I against any of these students? No. Okay, but it's how they're doing it and these strategies that they're using. So at this training, they were given a first day of school introduction card that they were encouraged to use the first day of school, which we saw happen all across the state the first week of school. This card came in a variety of, a lot of different versions of it were students or parents took pictures of it and sent it to me. But this card that was given out at this training, the first line was government name. That's just weird right there. Kids are like, government name? What's that? Government name, the second line, preferred name, the third line, preferred pronouns, and then the last 3 sentences were, when can I use this? Just between you and me? Right, because the teachers were told to tell the kids, this is just for you and me. You know, this is just a way for me to get to know you. Okay, and it won't go into anybody else. Can I use these names or pronouns in front of your peers? Can I use them with your parents? Okay, so under state law, these kind of surveys that ask personal questions of students it's required that parents, they get parental consent. These were not, nobody has asked the parents before passing these out. Okay, so all these kids are asking their preferred pronouns. Many, it's their first time ever being asked such a question, and they're completely baffled. They're like, what? But this is what they're trying to do in order to make a certain identity group feel welcome in the classroom. Everybody now has to play into this or go along with this new ideology, whether you believe it or not. Because I had one parent tell me her daughter came home and was telling her a story about a kid at school, and after a minute she's like, wait, so who is this friend of yours? Is it a girl or a boy? I can't tell. And she said, well, he is a she, but she wants to go by he. So in order to show empathy, I have to call him he. Or I have to call her he. Okay, so this is how they're using the word empathy. You may have heard in the news, a lot of people got mad at me saying I was trying to ban words like empathy, okay? And all these other words that I had put in my amendment to our new board rule that is supposed to stop CRT, which school has started, it's been adopted, and nothing has slowed down, okay? That's why I put forward my amendment, my 20-page amendment, to help them see what would actually be required to make an impact towards stopping this. Because their rule, it was watered down and full of loopholes and included a requirement that teachers use strategies of inclusion. Okay, whenever they're trying to get a word like that into a formal document or rule, they use the argument of inclusivity is a SPED term for special ed students to be included in the classroom, because that is where it originated. But if you read the documents from UNESCO or any of these other organizations, Equality Utah or the Utah Pride Center, inclusion is all about LGBT, or the Utah Association for Gifted Children in their 3-day training. Inclusion is all about LGBT. So as soon as that got passed, immediately they start working on trainings for gender inclusivity and LGBT strategies of inclusion. One of these strategies was used up in Davis School District by a ninth grade English teacher who, the first day of school, instead of putting out a card for the child to fill out that she could potentially be breaking Utah law, she said, all the boys line up on this side, all the girls line up on this side, and everybody else in the middle. Okay, strategies of inclusion. After all of this came out, we had lots of parents complaining, and so the board decided we need to deal with this issue, and all of a sudden they had this 8-page document that they brought before us for our consideration. It went before the Standards and Assessment Committee first. But in this document, one of the other strategies they told the student or the teachers to use is don't ask the students what their pronouns are. Instead, tell them what your preferred pronouns are and include it with your name. Write it on the board. A teacher friend, right before school started, called me and she said, I just received this email, and she gave me a copy of it from the vice principal at one of the schools she teaches in that said, we're making new name placards for outside each classroom door. What preferred pronouns do you want included on it? Okay, so they're normalizing it. So they don't have to ask the students to tell what theirs are or to write them. They just use it. All the teachers use it, and it becomes normal, and they think, well, that's just what you do, right? In this gender guidance document that came before us, which did not pass, thankfully, and they are reworking it because it was so egregious. It said, don't assume gender. If the student doesn't tell you what their gender is, then use the established gender-neutral pronouns, they, them, theirs. So that's what the teacher is supposed to call your student and tell your student tells them something different, right? So it's this coercive way of getting them to give that information so that they can be called by their biological pronouns, right? You have to buy into this. The other thing that it said is, at the beginning of the document, it did reference Utah law that to call a student by something other than their name or their official legal name or pronouns, that the student has to, or the school has to ask the parents for permission, right? But then later in the document, it says, if a student wants to go by something other, then before you contact the parent, first consult with the student and find out if talking to the student's parents might put them in an unsafe situation. And if it will put them in an unsafe situation, don't talk to the parents. Instead, contact DCSF.
Holy cow.
Huge leap. I think that was the part that made them go, whoa, 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 whoa. Which thankfully, so they haven't completely lost their minds. There's still some sanity left. But that's a huge problem. But then it also said, if the parent is affirming and is okay with this, with their child transitioning, then work with the parent to create a plan to present this information to your students' peers and help them understand. Okay? Do you see how, this agenda, if you go along with it, you're a good person, you're a safe person. If you don't go along with it, you are unsafe. Okay? So good parents that care about their student, that don't want them to make these radically life-altering decisions, are suddenly deemed non-inclusive and hateful and bigoted and unsafe and abusive even, right? Before any sign of abuse has ever been, there's no evidence. If you extrapolated out that idea of not talking to a parent, if the student thinks they might be unsafe, what else wouldn't you find out about your students? That they got a bad grade? That they broke the window at school? That they, were bullying another student, okay? It makes no sense. So thankfully we're working on that. That's another great example. I've had parents contact me and say, my son is in a room with a transgender teacher, and the teacher is, or a gender fluid teacher that told the students, you will know what to call me by depending on how I'm dressed that day. Okay? This is not okay for our kids to be having to deal with this. It's hard enough for them at this tender age, whether they're in elementary, junior high, or high school. It's so confusing. So let's just run down the list here. There's a link to the guidance document as it was, but you'll want to contact your state school board member and let them know what you feel is important to put in that document, because there will be a document, and we need parent input as to what should be on that and what should not be on that. This is a great resource. There you can go on childparentrights.org and get the free download of this. This is made by a few attorneys back east. It's a family-friendly approach to the gender issue at school. It's called Navigating the Transgender Landscape, a School Resource Guide. I would actually read this with your children and discuss it.
What's the website?
It's childparentrights.org. It helps you know how to handle this in a way that is appropriate to law, to Supreme Court precedent. It acknowledges biological reality and the legal names, and that students and teachers should not be required to go along with a lie. Okay, so it protects your rights of conscience and your free speech and diversity of thought, so that you and your children are not forced into participating in this.
Natalie, can I just say, I can't remember the girl's last name, Brooke, somebody, I don't know if she's here, from Utah Parents United, just contacted me the other day, yesterday, and wanted to know if I wanted to help, maybe you know who this person is, come and train us on the students' rights. So I don't know if people can go on Utah Parents United and find out when those are going to be. And she was actually saying that they wanted to actually invite the children to come. Yeah, they've been doing lessons, they've been doing classes during the summer for parents and students to help them know how to navigate these situations at school in a way that most parents would be good with. So for us to find out when those and they have a lot, like if you go to their summer parent classes on their webpage, you can watch a lot of those classes that were recorded over the summer, but they can do additional trainings. I think that they have, like, once a month, they have speakers come. They're up in Farmington where they meet. You can go up there, or you can get on the Zoom for those classes.